Hi, this is Jim Smith. Welcome to the 1000. As we work our chronological series up, we're getting up into the 1970s and an interesting period. We've got a character we've heard of before as Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Trudeau comes out of the bureaucracy and moves into politics, becomes Justice Minister, and then becomes Prime Minister. And I'd say kind of a controversial gentleman all the way around. Very much motivated to leave his mark on Canada, and he indeed did, as no other prime minister other than Sir John A. Macdonald has done. Trudeau really did it. And so I've been working with English's book, Just Watch Me Now, which is the second half of Trudeau's life from 68 to 2000. 68 to 78 are our particular concerns with Mr. Trudeau. That's the time when most of the activity that makes his name an anathema for gun owners in Canada tends to come about. So what happens is there's a tremendous furor in Quebec after the FLQ crisis. The army comes in, many people, over 200 people are arrested. People have no reason to be arrested. We have the War Measures Act, which is very draconian legislation enacted, and quite frankly, and this hindsight of second thought, all hell breaks loose over what happened there. What it did do, according to English, and I do tend to agree with them on this, is that it broke the violent back of Quebec separatism. It did very little for separatism, but it forced if you wish, the nut bars and the violence and the pseudo-Marxists and the wannabe Che Guevaras either out of the scene or into hiding or maybe even exile in Cuba, where Pierre Laporte's murderers ended up. And it brought forward a guy named René Lévesque. René Lévesque was a very dedicated separatist, little short guy, chain smoked cigarettes. From all accounts, one of the most charming gentlemen you'd ever meet. It's a guy I really regret not meeting. There's very few federal politicians that I really wanted to have met over the years. René Lévesque was certainly one of them. But he wanted Quebec to be a separate country, and he got involved in the political process to form a separatist party, which of course still exists in Quebec. The Bloc Québécois is a force that comes and goes but never goes away. This was like waving a large red flag to a bull, to Mr. Trudeau, who had written a book called Federalism and French Canadians, where he argued greatly for the country of Canada. There's also a couple other little issues that we have to understand here. Again, this is under the Official Secrets Act. We don't know really that much, but we know the Americans were having 6 different kinds of conniptions over the possibility of Canada being, and the word they used is balkanized. So Trudeau has to fight separatism now, not with the army, but with political process. And this becomes his obsession for the rest of his political career. I would argue for the rest of his life. It becomes his life work. And other things happen, but it's odd. Like I said, I'm using English's book here. This is a good book. It's perhaps a little stiff at the cover price, but if you can pick one up in the library, it's sure worth a read, because we don't get mentioned in this book all of a sudden. We get talked about very briefly in 68, and then we kind of drop out. Jack Horner, my old opponent from Crowfoot constituency when he moved to the Liberals, he's mentioned in there 3 times quite favorably, but in his own book, Mr. Horner wrote about his defeat, and he said gun control was the big issue in Crowfoot constituency. The Liberals were identified with gun control, and because I was a Liberal, I was defeated. None of this makes it into the official history book. Horner's book is called My Own Brand. It's a fairly rare book unless you live in Saskatchewan like I do, in which it shows up at a fair number of small country libraries, which is where I read it. But we are just not part of the history event at all yet. Having been there in 78, I can tell you it motivated a lot of people. The FAC was seen as the thin end of the wedge. Now, I've been told by people who think they're smarter than I am that this is a logical fallacy, that it has no meaning. But if you look at the reality of the world, things start with trial balloons with small items and then become larger. The thin edge of the wedge, the the camel's nose in the tent, whatever. Almost every culture there is in the world has some version of this myth. And the reason they have it is because it's true. It really is. And what happens is with the FAC, people say it's going to lead to registration. Of course, the government says, no, 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 that'll never happen. Yeah, right. We know what happened, and we'll follow that through as we follow this series through. But lying to us seems to be the acceptable modus operandi of politicians. What's interesting in the documentation, one of the things, I'd like to take a second here to explain what we're going to do. I'm going to produce an annotated bibliography of the books I've referred to, I think around episode 50 or 60. I'm going to take a break from doing episodes. We have some guests coming in that'll give me some time away from thinking about how to do these things. And I'm going to produce a bibliography of what we're talking about here. The other thing we will do together, because this is going to require some labor from people that are not me, because my back won't take it, is we're going to put together an extensive list of materials, PDF'd and put up, so that we have our own archives. These are archives of materials that probably exist somewhere, but have not likely been put together in one place. And one of the interesting documents is the Liberal documentation from 1978, where they did two things. They listed the purposes to own a firearm, and two things that stand out there. One is protection of life, which is very clear and at the top of the list. And the second thing is they specifically permitted the collecting or studying or scholarship of firearms. And if you go talk to politicians now, they'll tell you that never existed. But I take that document as a promise, and I think we should all take it as a promise. We'll put it up. Once the election's done and stuff like that, we'll start accumulating this stuff. One of our supporters, who's an old fart like me, tells me he's got 5 big cardboard boxes full of documentation from all through the eras. We'll put those up, and we'll have them there for people to study and to research, so that our story gets told a little bit more the way we need it told. And that's what we're going to do with your support, with your assistance, and with your kind words. So as our little blurb says, please like what we're doing, please share what we're doing, and if there's any way you can see your way clear to support our work, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thanks for dropping in and watching. If you liked what you saw, please share it with your friends. Please like it. Please subscribe to our channel and drop into www.the1000.ca and follow our movement. Bye.